stuff. Well, this actually gets the computer to do it, where you can go through and tag. So what you need to do then is to develop a coding system to make sense of the work that you have. This is just a coding system that comes out of their book, and this is to do with something about community values or something. And as you can see there, it's a tree structure, and what we have is you can put in base data, so you can call these things anything you like, anything that has meaning for the research that you're doing. So you can have the base data in here, so you can have the person's age, etc., whether they're married or not. And we can have in here, what we're going to have in here is whether they had a rapid onset or a slow onset, or, you know, did they have how many hospitalisations and that. So we'll be able to check all these things with all these other things. So then you can then have, say it's values. You can have all different branches of values, and say if it was interaction, then you can also have another subcategories of interaction. You know, values come from interaction with relatives, neighbours, friends, group, communities, so on. So you can see how it's a tree structure, it goes on. So you can equate and make sense of what you have. So you develop a coding system to do this. And so you can have as many of these as you like. Does that make sense? Is that sort of clear? So what you do with your data then is, once you've developed this coding system, and the coding system isn't something that's developed as a once-off. As you're going through your transcripts, you can add to the coding system and change it, so it becomes more meaningful and it reflects your data. And it's very easy to change those coding systems. So what you can do is end up with a whole heap of codes for specific things, and you will have a printout. Well, if I have, for instance, on this transcript, a code by a sentence that says 1133, I'd know that that means it's got base data in it, it's talking about interviewees, it's talking about religion, and this person's is, you know, an Islamic religion. So you, when I was going through, when I would go through my transcripts, what I would do is put these numbers beside each of those lines. So I could code those lines to say, to tag for the computer that this person is saying this at this particular time. So it's just a way of coding for the content that is within the transcripts and making some sense of it. And what we are doing with this is we will have two people have a subsection of the transcripts that we come up with, and we will look for the themes that we think are there, and so far we've had a 90% success rate with that. And then we will then look at coding and doing a coding, and once we've come up with the coding system between the two of us that makes sense to us, we will then hand that coding system to someone who has had absolutely nothing to do with the research and give them a pile of transcripts and say, does this make sense to you? So we'll have checking it for inter-rater reliability in that sense. In terms of our and this is by no means as elaborate as what theirs is out of their book, but this is what we've come up with so far in terms of our research and the things that we've found. And our research assistant has come up with this, and I'm not quite sure why he put dimensions there, but that made sense to him at the time. So it's dimensions of recovery, as I understand it. When we talk about this, when we report the results, we'll explain what all of these things, why we have named them that, and be able to give examples for all of them. So if we look at recovery, you have a definition of recovery that we have asked consumers about, and I've got an overhead to show you some of those. And then we talk about recovery as a process. And the things that the consumers that we have spoken to have said that they did go through a stage of denying, that there was questioning. They went through a big period of questioning. They were doing a lot of exploring. That a part of the process was recognising that they had the disorder. Another part of the process was struggling with the disorder, and then getting to a point of stability. So that's some of the things that our sample have spoken about so far. We haven't applied this fully to all of our transcripts, so this is very much beginning. Tentative results, as I've got out on the outline. These are very tentative results. If we look at the dimensions, we have dimensions that have been important in the recovery as being employment, there being a turning point, medication, the effects, and they've been determined as being negative or positive, and important seems to have been a different thing. So they either talk about positive and negative effects, but talk about the importance of it in a different way. Talking about themselves in terms of the coping mechanisms that they've used, and factors that have been facilitating have been things like music, exercise. Some people have used diet. Writing has been important, and so has artwork. If we look at some of the other dimensions, these are some more. You can see we haven't developed our tree. Not very good at drawing trees, but this was a very rushed attempt to bring over here. Other things that we're talking about is stigma, hope, and the environment. And if you look at the environment, these are all things within the environment that people have highlighted as being important. You know, the workforce, friends, relatives and other people, society, having social activities, social groups, family members. Another dimension has been the mental health institutions, being safe, a bad experience, isolating and not useful. So you can see mental health institutions haven't scored too well in our sample. Mental health professionals, the group that we spoke to have spoken about mental health professionals being helpful. And when they're talking about being helpful, what they're saying is things like, that person listened to me. You know, they actually heard what I said. I actually felt like they listened to me, that they understood me. The people that we've spoken to predominantly been very